Analysis. Let's stay in Washington, D.C., and we'll speak to Mohammed Abu-Nimer. He is a professor of peace and conflict resolution at American University. Professor, this death toll now in Gaza stands at almost 35,000. Why is Biden only now saying that he might not keep sending weapons to Israel?
Thank you. I think the closer we get to the election, the more pressure Biden has from the Democratic Party, as well as the most recent, movement on the campuses and the news coverage and the well covered or articulated demands of these students sent really a shock through the system of the Democratic Party and also the public in general, especially during their graduation. And I think the more growing public opinion around the world. I think they did not expect that the war will last until now. So, we're almost in May, and toward June and May, which is 4 or 5 months before. And I think the risk and the cost of this beginning to be more clear to the Democratic Party.
So do you actually think, if this was not an election year and we didn't see these student protests, Biden would not be stopping those arms shipments to Israel?
Well, I think eventually, if you look at the U.S. foreign policy in the past 7 months, they have shifted very, very slow. Not in a very significant way, but it's still, historically speaking, where we are now, it's the first time in the history of U.S. foreign relation with Israel that there is a threat, and the threat will be actually executed in the sense of stopping a certain type of arms. So the U.S. Pressure on Israel has been very gradual and very low, with not very significant, significant sign that will basically put a Netanyahu government in a very uncomfortable position. I think they always saw the U.S. in the past 7 months with a fully green light, 100% behind the war, and we just now seen the first significant, actual, concrete type of sanctions that will be imposed on the Israeli army. And I think that is historic and that is serious. Although it's not enough, it's too late. I absolutely agree with you.
Okay, not enough, too late. That's what you're saying. But I mean, we know that Biden is very pro-Israel. He's now even admitted that U.S. bombs have killed civilians. How difficult would you say that this is for him to send this kind of clear signal now to Israel?
I'm not sure. Difficult in the sense of, personally, I'm not sure. But diplomatically, there have been many signs that the U.S. foreign policy will actually have to take some actions, and they did in the veto in the United Nations, and then they did not veto a ceasefire. But it is difficult for a pro-Israel type of president to take such action. But I think the voices behind him and the U.S. government, democratic system, election machine is already seeing very difficult signs and very clear sign that there will be consequences, and the consequences for the complicity and for the silence will be reflected in the next election, especially among the youth and among the Muslim minority voters and others who have been warning the Democratic Party. So I'm not sure, that's where the difficulty is. But we know this president wholeheartedly as an individual, from his own faith, from his own history, that he did not expect himself to make such a decision. But I think the government of Netanyahu and what they're doing right now in Rafah, did not leave much choices to the president at this point.
So is it just symbolic, though, at this stage? I mean, is it going to make any kind of difference there on the ground?
I think most of the gestures were made symbolic, but this is really the first concrete act if the US indeed will not provide this type of weapon to Israel, the Israeli, I'm not a military expert, but the Israeli defense or the Israeli army in that sense, the expert, they're saying, they should have not relied on the US and they should be producing their ammunition. So clearly there is disruption in the 100% flow of weapon from the US to Israel, and this disruption may be 5 or 10%, but it's minor. It's not gonna stop the Israeli army from its invasion of Rafah or from its continuing to kill Palestinian civilians in Gaza. It basically there is certain weapons that were used in the attacks, in the offensive attack, that will not be available from the US, but we know Israel have many other supplies of weapons from around the world.
All right, Professor Abu-Nimer from the American University, thank you so much there for your time here on TRT World.